Started, sir?
Please go ahead.
Well, welcome and good morning to all of you. It really is one of those rare honors to be sitting next to a truly historic figure. Someone...
It scares me, Historic, ancient,
No.
antiquity.
Someone who has defined the intellectual pulse of a number of generations. For many of you, Mohamed Heikal has been a commentator on Egyptian and Arab affairs. Let me just tell you very quickly, when I was a PhD student, Mr. Heikal's books on Iran defined the intellectual currents of the Iranian Revolution. And I had to read them, Iran, the Untold Story, and The Return of the Ayatollahs, in order to better understand and be able to write my dissertation on the Iranian Revolution. That was back in the 1980s. And since then, he continues to define the pulse of the Middle East, the political pulse of the Middle East. I don't need to introduce him to you. You all know who he is. He is one of the biggest public intellectuals in the Arab world today. And we're delighted and honored to have him here at Georgetown. We're grateful to Qatar Foundation for this opportunity. We're grateful to our leaders here at Georgetown for making this opportunity possible for us. And we're grateful to you for being here with us and sharing time with us and answering questions.
I'm at your disposal completely. First of all, I'm very happy to be. Have you finished?
I'm done. I can go on if you...
I'm very happy to be here at this center of learning. I'm very happy to see you all. I must confess that I'm astonished that, as I told you in my first remark, that it looks more like an international conference than a university. But anyhow, I'm happy to be here, and I'm at your disposal completely. I haven't prepared any texts. I have no introduction to make. I thank everybody who welcomed me here. Thank you very much, Dr. Nonalignment. I'm at your disposal if there is anything I can say.
Well,
Maybe I should just, for those of you who, how many of you were at the talk last night? So about half, okay. So for a quick intro, perhaps to set the scene. Well, so as you know, Mohamed Heikal has written about Arab politics, Iran, the US connection to a lot of this. It's really the domestic and the international politics of the region. Yesterday, he talked about how the contemporary and future Gulf region fits into this and what might affect it. The geopolitics, really, of the Gulf into the future. So, feel free to ask anything either about his previous writings or views in any of these sorts of areas. If there's things that you have read that you wonder about, or that you liked, or that you have questions of, or if you want to follow up on some of the issues that we talked about yesterday, this is your chance.
all right, so I don't know what Egyptian team you support, but we're going to let the supporter of Zamalek ask the first question. How's that? If you would introduce yourself and...
Yeah, I'm Islam Hassan, I'm Egyptian. I'm Egyptian, I'm a senior here at Georgetown. I'm writing a paper now for Professor...
Sorry, the acoustics here are not as good as they can be, so if you can speak extra loud, that would be great.
Does the red light?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm Islam Hassan, I'm a student here at Georgetown and I'm Egyptian. I'm writing a paper now for Professor Kamaraba's class. It's about the non-aligned movement and the rise and fall of the non-aligned movement, and if it was actually non-aligned or not. Because most of the countries that were part of the non-aligned movement were socialist, they adopted socialist political systems and the socialist development path. So, and I'm using your book, the Cairo Documents, in keeping up with these. What do you think about this?
Normally non-alignment is taken as, normally, or at the first sight, it looks as if it's dépassé. You know, because people thought always of non-alignment as a situation between two poles. And since we don't have any two poles now, either one pole, the United States, or several poles, which are emerging now, I don't think what happened in the past is that people always associated non-alignment with a situation between two powers. This is no more valid, obviously, because I think there is a mistake in understanding non-alignment. It is not mainly, it's not a position in between. I remember one day we were attending a meeting at the Rajya Sabha, the Indian Parliament. And the speaker that day, one of the members of the parliament at that day asked Mr. Krishna Menon, who was Minister of Foreign Affairs of India, about non-alignment, exactly your question. And I remember still well how Krishna Menon, who was a great personality in the history of India and the politics of India, stood up and said, non-alignment is not to be here, not to be there. We are in the mid. Some member of parliament said that, not to be here, not to be there. We are in the middle of the road. And Krishna Menon stood up and said, stay at the middle of the road so that you can be run over. Mm-hmm. It is not a situation of, it is a situation, mainly non-alignment is a situation of taking an independent position in every case according to its merits. The essence of non-alignment is not to have a preconceived idea about issues, is to be open about issues, and you take a position of independence according to the merits of each case. So it's not just between two poles or several poles. It is to be more or less independent, and that is the way I think the fathers of non-alignment, that means Nehru, Tito, and Nasser, defined it in Brioni, 1956. It is mainly to be there in every issue and in every international dispute or whatever it is, and take an independent position. And that's why I remember that Nehru always thought of independence as being the non-aligned are the conscious of the world, because you don't take a preconceived idea, you study each issue at its merits, you decide where can justice be, where can be reason even be, and you take your position regardless of whatever superpower wants to dictate or to say, or whatever international power wants to say. So many people ask if it is still irrelevant, or if it's still relevant, or is it irrelevant. If you look at it as a middle position between powers, it's irrelevant. But if you look at it as an independent position taken in every case, without preconceived ideas, without preconceived or pre-planned alliances, then I think it's still valid. Maybe we all hoped that the United Nations can be that form, but the United Nations, as you know well, can't function exactly. But for the time being, I don't think really that those who are independent in the world, powers and states, I think somehow the movement is scattered. I don't think, because of the absence of war, especially because of the absence of war, I think that it is becoming a very fluid concept, but I think it needs, it is still relevant. That's the most important thing. I don't know, and then there are no banner carriers now. I mean, there are no, apart from the powers that we see on the stage, I don't see that there are credible powers which can really take the banner and represent something.
Halal there is writing a paper for me on Qatari foreign policy.
On
Qatari foreign policy. And I think he wants to know if you think Qatar is biting on more than it can chew, given its involvement in Libya and now in Syria. I think he's a little speechless, as you see, so I'm asking the question for him.
You know, let me say this. I always measure the influence of a country by so many factors. I don't think that Qatar as a state can be a major player on the stage. But, you know, it so happens sometimes in history that you can find personalities, certain exceptional personalities who can really, not representing in a way their countries, but by their stature, by their I think that the Sheikh Hamad is now playing a role. It's a very interesting role. It is beyond the resources of Qatar because it's not only money which can make it, or it's not, you know. I think that what we are seeing in Qatar are the ambitions of Sheikh Hamad, and I think he is very effective in doing it, very successful. But you know, to talk about the power all over the Gulf, I'm talking frankly, all over the Gulf, it's a bit exaggerated. You can talk about a center of learning, you can say a center of wealth, you can talk about this, you know, but for a power to be effective and have foreign policy, real foreign policy, you need more than the state of Qatar. You need something more. But you know, sometimes some leaders can express a little bit more than what their countries can do. I'm sorry to say that, but obviously I follow the Middle Eastern policies there now. I hear the voice of Qatar. I'm happy they are playing the role they are playing, although I differ in so many aspects of the Qatari policies, but still I am happy that there is somewhere somebody is trying to express power more than all the resources that he can possess.
I do have a question, as a matter of fact, regarding Qatar and Egypt. What do you think of Qatar's stance towards the situation in Egypt, specifically like the domestic affairs of Egypt? Do you think Qatar is interfering in the domestic affairs of Egypt?
All right. You know, when you are an activist, sometimes the boundaries can be confused. And you are very activist in the area generally. In Egypt, I have some reservations concerning Qatari policies in Egypt. I differ with two things mainly. I differ with the support you are giving to the Muslim Brotherhood, although I understand the reason why. I mean, because this, for the time being, is the only political power, organized political power on the stage. If you exclude the Muslim Brotherhood, then you are talking about a military takeover, and I don't think it's the time for military takeovers. So first of all, let me be precise. I differ with your policy concerning the support you are giving to the Muslim Brotherhood. I think that Gezira Egypt, direct Egypt, I think it's a little bit too much. You know, it is infringing really on the, you know, you can have the Gezira from here, from Qatar, talking everywhere and reaching everywhere. But there is a difference between this and between having a Qatari, a Gezira, direct Egypt inside Egypt. I think this is something which I am not very happy about. So those are two things. Apart from that, I must confess that Qatar is really helping. It is the only, practically at this moment, it is the only country in this area which is really trying to help, which everybody in Egypt should be grateful for it, and they are grateful for it. Yet, the reservations I have, I told you frankly.
Another student, who shall remain anonymous, wrote a paper on Bahrain. Can you tell us your take on what's going on in Bahrain?
I thought this is a bit, it's a minefield. But I must confess that, you know, I was one of those people who were honored to negotiate about the future of the Gulf with Sir William Roos in the old days. And I think Bahrain took a long, a very hard effort really to convince even the Shah of Iran to leave it, to accept the Arab nature of Bahrain. Because they insisted, at that time they insisted, 1969, 1968, they were insisting that Bahrain should be Iranian. And we all stood for that, against that. The composition of Bahrain by nature, it is, it's very difficult here in the Gulf. Really, it's very difficult to differentiate. The idea of a Shia and Sunni, I'm sorry, I'm out of this game. I don't believe that we should turn back to 1,000 years and talk about Shias and Sunnis. Bahrain, I'm not sure that the rights of the majority are respected, and the Shia majority in Bahrain is respected as it should be. This is a very difficult issue, obviously, as you know, because Saudi Arabia is very active in this area. They are worried about the eastern provinces. And I think that we need, if we are talking fairly, if we are talking about the future, I think we need to either exclude completely that division between sects, or we admit the facts that every citizen have got a right in his country, regardless of Shia, Sunni, whatever it is. But I must confess that I feel some sympathy, lots of sympathy, as a matter of fact, with the people in Bahrain. I think they are subjected, there is a human rights issue, definitely. It would be hypocrisy from our side if we just sit here and talk about the usual stereotypes. There is a problem in Bahrain and it should be addressed. And the Shia there, the Shias in Iran, I think the Shia of Iran, of Bahrain, I think they are subjected to a certain degree of discrimination, which should not be.
I actually have a question about this new rise of Arab nationalism. Many people believe that it died away with Nasser, but I think that the Arab Spring has brought, in a way, a new definition to Arab nationalism and Pan-Arabism.
Has Arab Spring brought about a new form of nationalism? Arab nationalism.
Unfortunately, no. Unfortunately, the new spring was taken over. I think the true spring started in a way. Mind you, I don't think still that we are facing a revolution. We are facing a state of revolution. I mean, this is the beginning of something. What we have seen was very majestic in Tunisia and in Egypt. And then something else happened. There were so many interferences, there were so many cross currents, but the result is that I think that the rest of all the Arab world at this stage is in a state of lull. A state of revolution is going on definitely in the Arab world, especially in Egypt, where I can talk with some confidence. We are seeing in Egypt an upheaval, and I think it is healthy in a way, in two ways. One is that the people are participating, everybody is participating. All of a sudden, everybody is a politician, activist. And then the second thing is that there is a process of, apart from the activism, there is a process of soul searching about the future. I am not sure that those springs produced a new sort of Arab nationalism. I think the whole idea of Arab nationalism needed revision, needed to look back and try to study, because it is quite clear that I think two mistakes Arab national movement did. One is that it underestimated the power of nationalism, of local nationalism. Second time, I think it failed completely to recognize the rights of the minorities, either ethnical or national, whatever it is. But I think we needed to look, another look. But I don't think what you see now is practically a sort of chaos, of a creative chaos, if you want to say. I am not, sometimes I feel anxious, I feel worried about what's happening, but sometimes I see a historical process taking over. But no, still, I don't see any sort of Arab nationalism, any new ideas of Arab nationalism, nor do I see a clear path to the future. But I'm sure that only a process is going on, and we are in a state of revolution, and it is going to develop somehow. But it's very complicated, because the way the world itself we are living in, especially with the social media, is becoming very complicated. One of the mistakes we always thought is that a revolution can be made by the internet, by the Facebook, and by, I don't know, all those gimmicks. People have to be there on the ground, active, live, and there is no substitute. If you have a revolution, it's like exactly between a design, the difference between a design and the realization of building. Now we have got the imagination, but it's not put into test. We need more time. When we thought that the social media can fasten can make it go faster, I think it's making it slower. Other than
I want to give the students a chance, but if they're going to be thinking about it, I'll just want to, what do we see in the future for the Arab world? Is it a Western-style democracy, 100 years down the line, or is it a Khalifa? Is it a Khilafat? Is it what's coming forward in the next system that's going to be here in the region?
I want to get exactly the question.
So the next stage, the Western democracy
Western democracy?
for the region. What's the next stage?
I am not sure that, you don't necessarily need to copy an example which is there. Definitely the idea of representation is still the best way to achieve a degree of democracy. But to be frank with you, I think that we are not moving towards Western democracy as such. We can reach a great degree of democracy if democracy means participation. I think participation in everything, political, economical, but you need more, you need a concept of citizenship more than anything else to make democracy. Here you have got, we are still in a paternalistic stage of our development. I am not sure what we can aspire for now is a higher degree of participation. But I think for a long time in the Arab world still, and because of so many concepts, inherited concepts, I'm sorry, I'm talking frankly, I mean, the ideas in Islam itself, because Islam is the founding culture in our lives. You know, I think we need to be courageous, more courageous a little bit, and look at it. Western democracy, I'm not sure this is exactly what we are heading to. A new form of democracy can develop, yes, maybe. That the people on every level are participating and actively in what's happening, it's very healthy. But you know, if what we are seeing in Egypt, for example, demonstrations, if this is democracy, I don't think this is the core of democracy. But this is a certain degree of at least cutting loose from all the old ties. And you know, you don't jump to democracy is a result and not a beginning, unfortunately. It is the result of social, cultural elements you can achieve. But when you start with democracy, with the vague idea of democracy, I'm talking frankly, in our societies, as you see them now, I think you would be asking for the impossible. What I wish to happen now is that to see people coming out actively, interested in politics, interested in their affairs, participating not only with their emotions, demonstrating and against something, but I wish we reach a stage when we can be demonstrating for something, not necessarily against something.
Yes, the lady in the back.
Sorry, I know it's slightly linked to the question. My father tells me that he made a historical interview with Mahmoud Fawzi, the first prime minister of Egypt at the times of Sadat. And that at the time, the core of the interview was about him defining the rights and obligation of a state towards its citizens and vice versa. Do you believe today there is someone or a group of people in the Arab region that are working on these issues? Because like you said correctly, what we need to move forward is to redefine the relationship between the state and the citizen. So is there hope that someone is working on this? And if there is there
Someone is
working on this.
on what?
On the relationship between citizens and those who have power.
And the state?
And the state.
You know, if we think that the development of nations can go according to plans very well defined, I think we are mistaken. You know, whether somebody is working, if there is somebody working to define our relations exactly and what we can think, I think then we'll be heading to a dictatorship. But I think that the emergence, the development will economic, social, and cultural, I think will push to the forward ideas and people who can represent the future and define the relations of powers in that future. But if you think that somebody is working on, there are so many plans in the Arab world, unfortunately, and so many, you know, I think there was a time when I thought that the cultural life of the Arab world is barren and we are not talking enough. My problem is that I see we are talking too much and too many parties are really pushing themselves to practically on our behalf, talking about our future. And I think the future cannot. Generally, I think you can go to the future not according to a plan, but you can go to the future with, you know, a thrust, if I can say so, you know, ideas, beliefs, and then go ahead and let the life itself, your effort, the human effort, life with the conditions, with the world conditions, work themselves towards a future. But for somebody to sit and talk about the future and plan it this way, you mentioned about Dr. Fauzi. I think Dr. Fauzi was one of our really great minds. And, he was no politician. He was an intellectual, more or less. He spent most of his life in diplomacy, and he was a great diplomat. But his ideas were, let development take its place, and let us talk freely and think, and then, it is the thrust for the future, and then, because normally you always have one step to look forward to. Those who have long-term plans, I don't believe in that, because it is like a dialogue. You start with the first question, with the first idea, and then you don't know what's going to come in front of it, because it is a dialogue. Like in war, for example, any commander can start a war, but if he stick to the plan, to his plan from the first beginning to the end, he will fail. He had to change according to what he can meet after the first step.
Yes.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for being here with us today.
Sorry, can you use the mic? Yes, thank you.
Hi. First of all, I'd like to thank you for being here with us today. And my question is about the Gulf states. Like, what kind of movements do you see within the Gulf states, either today or in the near future? Like, for example, we know that by 2020, the US is going to be self-sufficient in gas and oil. So how is that going to affect the Gulf, or is there any impact on the people and on the state?
So,
I'm sorry, it seems to me either there is an echo in the room or that...
There is an echo. So the question was, the United States will be self-sufficient in oil and gas relatively soon, by 2020. How do you see the future of the Gulf region?
The future of the Gulf, people and states.
The people and
as a matter of fact, this is a matter which I tackled yesterday. I think that this area is in danger, really. And, oil definitely is not losing its power, but it's losing its supremacy as a source of energy. And this will affect this area definitely. And then more than that, I am afraid that the vacuum which is being created in the west of you, Syria, Egypt, because there is, what's happening in the Arab world is unbelievable, unfortunately. I never thought it could reach that stage, but we are there already. But there is a vacuum of authority, a vacuum of order, a vacuum in so many aspects, and I think it will affect you. New powers are going to rise, and they are rising already in Asia. I think the center of gravity in the world is moving more or less to the east. And this is the importance of Iran, because this position geographically is becoming more and more important. I think Iran will going to be the pivot of the coming area, whether it's Islamic or whether it is another state, or whatever it is. But I think the Gulf area, as we see it now, I think it is facing a future which needs more planning and more awareness. Until now, you had the luxury, obviously, of sitting where you are, giving advice to everybody, which is good and healthy, but it's not sufficient. You are going to face, it's not very imminent, but you are, I think in not more than 10, 15, 20 years, I think this area is going to face a very critical situation, security-wise. I think also the fact that not only the United States is self-sufficient, there are so many discoveries, there are so many substitutes for energy now which are coming out. So I hope here that you can look forward and face what is coming. Obviously, what you see around you is quite pleasing and quite assuring. But I think what you are going to face needs more awareness. And not only oil. I mean, I think even strategically, this area is going to face pressures from both sides, from two sides, or more than two sides. You know, normally, the Gulf, normally, and I said this yesterday, there were three powers, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Iraq, which are hovering over the Gulf, and they were balanced always by the east, by the west of you here, Egypt, Syria, some other Arab states. This balance of power is no more there. And I think this area is exposed more than necessary, and I think you should take care of that. It's not only oil. Yes, oil is a factor. The supremacy of oil is a factor till this moment, but this supremacy is fading, is regressing, is retreating. It's still important, very important, but I think what you are going to face, the challenge you are going to face is more than that, more than oil.
Do you think the people are aware of this? They're aware of what the future may hold for the Gulf? And if they're not aware, then why aren't they aware? Like, is it because of the lack of dialogue between people in power and masses, or are there any other
You know, you more or less, I don't know what the solution is. Yesterday I was tackling that problem. I don't know what the solution is, and I don't want to interfere or talk about a solution. But you know, the order on which you were depending for security is no more there. You know, more or less, there was not exactly an Arab system, but there was the intention of an Arab system represented in the Arab League. This system is no more there, unfortunately. This, mind you, this system was the ghost of a system, if you want to say. When I said that we were negotiating, I was one of the negotiators with William Luce about the future of the Gulf. That means that at that time, somewhere, somebody in the Arab world represented something, even a power or a dream or whatever it is. And we were negotiating by the power of that idea or dream or somebody or whatever it is. Now, the balance of power on which this area depended is no more there. The local power, the regional balance of power is no more there. What is going to happen in Iran is going to affect you tremendously. What happened in Syria is going to affect you tremendously. What happened in Egypt, you know, it is no more the secure environment in which you were living and in which everybody had a stake in your security and success. There is something different now, and I think the people who are entitled more than anybody else to think about it are you, people in the Gulf. Unfortunately, because of the sensitivities which are there all over the Arab world now, I myself, one of the people who would say, let them think about it. If they needed our participation in the Arab world, your depth in the Arab world, if it's needed, they will find so many people to do it with them. But for the time being, you know, with all the sensitivities in the Arab world, with the disparities between rich and poor, with the suspicions everywhere, with the sectarian divisions, you know, everybody is holding, waiting, you know. But I think I am worried about the Gulf. I must confess, I am worried. not for this year or next year, no. I am provided for the, as I said yesterday, in the after tomorrow, the morning after tomorrow.
Once again, it's a pleasure to have you at Georgetown. Thank you for coming. My name is Mohamed Abu Zaid. I'm from Egypt, and I'm a senior at Georgetown. My question is in regards to Egypt. What are your views on the process of on the democratic consolidation in Egypt and the democratic progress? And how do you view Morsi's term and the Brotherhood after 1 year in office? Process of democratic consolidation in Egypt, democratic progress.
Process of democratic consolidation in Egypt and Morsi's conduct in office after 1 year. Being in office.
The Muslim Brotherhood?
Morsi, yes.
Morsi and the Muslim Brotherhood.
You know, the Muslim Brotherhood were very clever, because very clever, because I think we were all convinced, nearly convinced, that they have got the power, they have got the candidates, the ideas to achieve a program. But unfortunately, when they came to power, we discovered, even in practice, that they have nothing of all what we imagined. You know, I think many governments, made a ghost and a monster of the Muslim Brotherhood than even a power, more than they deserve. When the time of test came, I see a government now in the Muslim Brotherhood. They are trying, maybe they are full with good intentions, but I don't think they have an idea about neither the times in which we are living, nor the problems of Egypt. As you know, I don't see now with Dr. Morsi, who is a very nice man. He is in power for till now 9 months or nearly a year. I am not sure that a program for the Muslim Brotherhood had emerged. I don't think that a leadership emerged. I don't think that a plan emerged. Maybe they needed time, maybe they need a chance, but till now I do not think that this is the future of Egypt. I think the future of Egypt did not emerge yet till this moment. There is, as I told you, there is a lull, and I think it's healthy, I think it is creative, but for the time being, what I can see is that, you know, if I told you the Muslim Brotherhood have got nothing, neither leadership, unfortunately, they have not got at least what is necessary to achieve or to do the job needed at this moment. Whether they will, by experience, they acquire that, I'm not sure till now, but I hope. The problem also is that the civilian organizations, the parties, and what's the so-called opposition did not prove themselves. They were not. They have not defined the moment well. So the Muslim, I'm one of the people who believe that this regime, Dr. Morsi and the Muslim Brotherhood, should continue their constitutional mandate 4 years. Because A, there is no other alternative. B, I think they need to take their chance. What will happen, you know, because the only alternative now, for some people are asking for the army to return back to power. I am against it. I don't think this is not necessary or this is useful. And I think as much agony as it can cause to us, we have to accept that this transition should take its place, hoping that they may learn or another alternative, civilian alternative, can emerge.
Hello, thank you for being with us today. And my name is Sarah, I'm from the United States, and I was just wondering what your insight is on the future of Palestine and for the Palestinian people.
What?
Your insight on the future.
The Arab world, unfortunately, the Arab world have lost its way to whatever it is, either causes its future, its security. But you know, what we see now, the Palestinian question is out of sight from everybody. You know, when I hear now that many of the Arab countries adopt the policy of the enemy, you should define the enemy. You should define not the enemy, the threat at least, from where the threat can come. Because this is the basic element in any strategy. You have to define the threat and define the cause. What do you want? But unfortunately, there was a time when the Palestinian question was really the center of attention in the Arab world. It's no more that. All of a sudden we stood up, we woke up one day, the pictures changed. Instead of the threat, instead of the threat of Israel, it is the threat of Iran. Instead of the danger of the Zionism, for example, it is the Shiism. This I don't understand. The result is that the Palestinian question was pushed in the backyard and nobody is talking about it. And I think we are going to see, quite in the near future, a settlement, a sort of a settlement based on the so-called Saudi initiative. And I don't think that the Palestinian question is on the agenda of anybody in the Arab world for the time being. Everybody wants to keep this in the backyard, and they are taken over by other issues, for one reason or another.
Your thoughts on Syria? What do you think about Arabian intervention in Syria, or countries in the Gulf, or countries like Egypt? Do you think, or more precisely, frankly, putting it, Qatar and Saudi Arabia, what do you think of their intervention in Syria?
This is a very difficult question. You know, definitely, like everywhere in the Arab world, Syria needed change. And I think a process of change was beginning. And I think so many parties interfered prematurely. And the intervention was sometimes by arms and by propaganda and psychological warfare. And I think it really complicated. You know, Syria is destroyed. And I don't believe in any policy which can lead to the complete destruction of an Arab country under any circumstance. I'm sorry to say that. Under any circumstances, I wouldn't accept the destruction of an Arab country, even at the name of freedom or self-determination. You know, the first prerequisite for a nation is to live, first of all. And then to keep what it achieved. You know, when I see what is happening in Aleppo, I bleed, I honestly bleed. When I see what happened to Damascus, nobody can tell me this is a liberation movement. Yes, the regime in Syria was very oppressive. Yes, it is a dictatorship, clear to me. But I'm not sure that it is. I would not endorse an option which destroys Syria under the pretext of liberating Syria. Am I clear?
We hope in 5 years you will accept our invitation to come back and talk about issues that are
5 years, that's too luxurious for me.
All right, in 10 years.
5 years. I am sorry, I'm one of the people who do not hide their ages. I'll be 90 coming September.
MashaAllah.
If you are talking about 5 years ahead from now, I'm sorry. I am not sure I can guarantee I'll be here.
Well, inshallah,
But
you
if
will
you
be.
can give me a guarantee, I'll be happy.
But can you give us a preview of what you will talk to us in 5 years? 5 years from now, we're sitting here looking at regional issues.
Most probably, I don't think I'll be talking about anything because I'll be suffering Alzheimer's.
We sincerely
Always
doubt
hope.
it. We sincerely doubt it. But listen, thank you again for sharing your thoughts and insights with us. You have really given us a lot of food for thought, and we have not even let you drink your coffee. As a meager token of our appreciation, let us give you a book that my students have had to suffer through, and they wanted to share the suffering, and we hope you accept this token of our appreciation, and we thank you for being here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can we please get a picture of the students and Heikal and the dean? Can we look at the camera, please?
One more. Okay, ready?
Please look here.
Sir? Okay, ready, 1, 2.
Thank you very much.
Sir?